You talk about that geopolitical war of Vietnam. And you obviously served there. When you were there, what was the perspective of those who you were defending and those who you were fighting for, meaning the Vietnamese?
Well, it's very interesting. I was, unlike most people, I was with the Vietnamese. I was embedded in a Vietnamese unit as an advisor with a few other Americans. Most Americans who served in Vietnam were with American units. And we have a tendency when we go to war to bring America with us. So they lived on compounds, they had hot food and showers and so on. Those of us who were advisors or in special forces and other missions, but we didn't have any of that stuff. We ate dehydrated rice that was made barely palatable by mixing it with pond water that had been rendered more or less safe by putting iodine tablets in it and so on. So we had a completely different life. Our view as advisors was very much different than the view of Americans who were in American units. And both of my deployments to Vietnam were with Vietnamese units. Because we were embedded with the Vietnamese, and many of us spoke Vietnamese as a result of it, our view was completely different, and our perception was a mixture of affinity for the people we were serving with. Don't forget they're our comrades. We're in the crucible of war and we're fighting we depend on each other and so on. And on the other hand, the inability of the Vietnamese to learn the lessons that they needed to in order to defend themselves. I have to say as an aside, a lot of the worst tactical lessons the Vietnamese army learned, they learned from us.
In what sort of way?
Well, for example, it contacted the enemy, the Viet Cong or the North Vietnamese army, and then pulled back, called in artillery and airstrikes, bombed the bad guys, and then left, and not recognizing that this is a riff on Seinfeld when he's trying to get a mid-sized car. They don't have a mid-sized car for him.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have no mid-size available at the moment.
I don't understand. I made a reservation. Do you have my reservation?
Oh, yes, we do. Unfortunately, we ran out of cars.
But the reservation keeps the car here. That's why you have the reservation.
I know why we have reservations.
I don't think you do. If you did, I'd have a car. See, you know how to take the reservation, you just don't know how to hold the reservation. And that's really the most important part of the reservation, the holding. Anybody can just take them.
We taught them to take terrain, but we never taught them how important it was to hold terrain. And holding terrain and holding sway over the population and governing them, that's the most important thing. We taught them not to do that. We had a policy of counting corpses. If the bad guys lost more people than we did, then we won. And in 1975, when the North Vietnamese streamed down to take over the rest of Vietnam, we recognized how vacant that strategy was. If you want to control a population, if you want to govern, you have to control the terrain too. And to the extent that you don't do that, you're going to lose. We taught them that. We taught them to do all the worst things. Again, in retrospect, it was a very bad idea. But those of us who were with the Vietnamese, and we were at the bottom of the food chain, we recognized that long before everybody else did, because we were in the midst of trying to control Vietnamese terrain and failed miserably because that wasn't the policy.
Can you talk a little bit for those who haven't come in contact with the difficulties of defending freedom, what that experience is like, and basically understanding a little bit of what it actually means to fight?
Well, at one level of analysis, you have to give up everything to which you become accustomed in order to become part of the mechanism that defends everybody else. You put on a uniform, you lose most of your freedoms. If you're overseas in an American unit, you can't get married unless you ask your commander's permission. You can't go anywhere unless you have a pass, and so on. You have to recognize that you're told what to do, and you have to abide by a panoply of rules and regulations which may be alien to you, especially if you've lived a life of ease, being able to do whatever the heck you wanted to do, funded by somebody else. That the world's not like that. Not there. If you're going to have to make a contribution to the defense of your country, you're going to give all that stuff up. But it's a small price to pay to ensure that not just you, but everybody else has the freedom to do whatever he wants afterwards. The second thing to keep in mind is that you're and this is a positive aspect of it, you're going to be in a very small community of people who all have the same mission, and all of whom, and this is really most important, depend on each other for everything. When you hear of people performing valorous acts in combat, if they've survived and you ask them why did they do that, they'll all tell you the same thing, whether they were recognized for it or not. They would say things like, I did it for them because I knew if the situation were reversed, they'd do it for me. And I'm constantly reminded of, in thinking about all this, the observation of Hillel, who said, if not you, who? And if not now, when? If you're not going to do it, who's going to do it? There's a sense of shared privation, but also a sense of shared support that comes of being in a military unit and being in a difficult combat situation that you can't duplicate anywhere else. And I think the third thing that comes to mind, and one of the things that motivates people to serve, whether it's the first thing they think of when they first go into the service, or it's the last thing they think of when they think about why they joined. They may have joined because they needed a job or something like that. And that is, they're part of something much bigger than themselves. And I think, especially when you get older, nothing gives you more satisfaction of knowing that you're recognizing that you're nobody. I mean, you're somebody to somebody else. But in the giant scheme of things, the only way that you can reach into the future is to be part of something much larger than yourself. And that's what we're missing when we don't have people serve. When
you talk about that under pressure situation and how you have to react to it, perhaps through the analogy of how you received your Medal of Honor award, or perhaps in another way, are you able to talk a little bit on the mindset of when you're under fire, having to take the helm of responsibility and make decisions that are quite literally life or death?
It's interesting. Somebody asked me one time, were you scared? And I think about it a little bit, and I came to the conclusion, and I told them I was always scared. I mean, when people are ardently trying to kill you, if you're not scared, there's something, you need to have your head examined.
It's good whiskey.
Well, that's right. Or if you say after the fact, no, I wasn't scared, then you're either lying or you're mentally deranged, or perhaps both. So, no, I was always scared in combat. And when I wasn't in combat, I was scared I would soon be in combat. But fear is a very interesting thing. For most people believe that if you're really scared, it freezes you and that's the end of it. But that's not how it really works. For most people, not all, but for most people, even those who are worried about how they might perform in a situation in combat where, it's really dangerous and you're liable, if not likely, to get killed or wounded. It's a galvanizing a variable. It makes you, and I've spoken a lot. I've been in combat. I've spoken to a lot of other people in combat. It makes you do things that you otherwise wouldn't do. Now, one of the reasons is you're with your buddies. You depend on them, they depend on you. And if you've come to the conclusion that you're the only person who can perform a certain act, then you're gonna go ahead and do it. Because like I said, they'll do it for you if the situation were reversed, particularly if a lot of people are killed and wounded. But I think the whole notion of fear in civilian life is very much different than its effect in combat. It welds units together and causes people to do things they would never think that they would be able to do. And that's why in combat, in particularly difficult circumstances, ordinary people do really extraordinary things.